Well, I knew Michael very well, and he was a special guy. He was with me many, many times at Mar-a-Lago in particular, in Palm Beach, and so many unbelievable weekends took place with Michael, especially in Palm Beach, Florida. And to lose Michael is amazing. Truly iconic. A great, great entertainer, the best I've ever seen. He was all excited about his comeback. He was sold out all over. Thousands and thousands of seats, all sold out. And it didn't take place till next July, and yet he was sold out. He was telling me all over. And it's very sad. Michael did a lot for charity, and if I ever needed him for something, if he had to come like tonight to Police Athletic League, not that he was thrilled about it because the last 10 years were tough for him, but he'd always be there. Michael was very loyal to his friends. I think people don't really know. We all know he was an unbelievable entertainer. You know, you had Elvis Presley, you have Michael, you have very, very few like it. But Michael was a very, very smart guy. A lot of people don't realize that he was really smart.
What do you make of this whole story that's out there? Can you believe it? You know him.
I don't believe it, personally.
Michael's been a long-time resident of Trump Tower, and last night the Donald strongly reiterated his defense of Jackson with Larry King by going after the accuser's mother.
She's had plenty of experience at going after people, and she goes after them viciously and violently, and I saw a story and I read another story about some of the things she's done, and I don't believe it.
But you know what it's like when an indictment comes down.
It's tough.
It's presumption.
It's tough. It's tough to win, but I have a feeling he's going to win, Larry.
I had no idea he'd be that strong defensive of him. And good for Donald, you know. You know, we do believe in innocence in this country, hopefully.
He lives in the building, and he's been a total gentleman, and we've never seen anything like what we're reading about.
Donald Trump, the king of New York real estate, is actually a landlord to the king of pop. Billy Bush spoke to the Donald in the very tower where Jackson owns a residence.
What do you make of this whole story that's out there? Can you believe it? You know him.
I don't believe it, personally. There are many people that feel that Michael is being used in a way to make money. I just know that Michael Jackson's been with me for a long time, and we've never had a problem.
Donald Trump, old friend, real estate mogul, star of Celebrity Apprentice. How well did you know Michael, Donald?
Well, Larry, as you know, I knew him very well. He was a great guy. He was actually a very, very smart businessman. He was somebody that was very special. He lived in Trump Tower for an extended period of time in New York, and right next to me, actually, and so I got to know him very well. He would go down to Mar-a-Lago and Palm Beach a lot. In fact, that's where he was with Lisa Marie Presley when it first came out, and he was there for a very long period of time, but he would go down often.
When was the last time you spoke with him?
Probably a year ago, Larry. You know, Michael was a much different guy in the last 7 or 8 years, maybe 10 years than he was. I always view it as two Michael Jacksons. You had...
How do you mean?
Well, you had Michael from, let's say, up till around the age of 35, and that was somebody, the greatest entertainer I've ever seen. And then you had the later version of Michael, who was much more reticent. He was much shyer. I mean, you know, he was just a little bit of a different guy. And I really knew both Michaels. He was a terrific guy. He was a wonderful guy. But he lost a certain amount of confidence in the last 10 years. I mean, he went through a lot, including some very, very bad doctors.
And what about the business aspect of this? Is he going to be worth a lot more gone than here?
Well, he's going to be worth a lot of money. He's got all of his albums are #1 now. I mean, he's just knocking the hell. Probably they've never seen anything like it. And I guess the debt will be paid off pretty quickly. But he really was. He was a great businessman, and I talked to him. He'd come into my apartment, and we talk a lot about business. And as an example, he met with Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney was telling him, and this is a pretty well-known story, but Michael told it to me. Paul McCartney mentioned that he was going to try and buy back the other half of the Beatles' music, and Michael then went out and bought it. Now, you could say it's not very nice, and I've heard that Paul has always been very angry at Michael for doing that, but perhaps Paul shouldn't have mentioned it. Perhaps that's just business and the way it is. But he really was a very, very good businessman and a very smart guy.
Well, you're a sharp realtor guy, and you know Southern California. I was up in Neverland. We did a whole show from there Thursday. I never saw a property as beautiful as that. 3,000 acres. What would you do with it?
Well, I'm not sure exactly who owns it. A very good friend of mine, Tom Barrack, is very much involved.
Yeah, he was there. Their company apparently pretty much owns it.
Yeah, Tom is a brilliant guy and a wonderful friend, and he was actually somebody that helped Michael Jackson a lot over the last couple of years. But I think Tom has that. I'm just not sure what you can do it from a zoning standpoint.
Could you envision a Graceland?
Well, I could, but it's a difficult area, and you have to go through this town, and as you know, they drove him crazy. You know, the interesting thing is I've known Michael from many different standpoints, and Michael would spend a lot of time with my kids. I have beautiful kids, and at the time, like at Mar-a-Lago, and even in Trump Tower, the kids were very young. Michael would come, play with the kids. He just loved children. He was not a child molester, and I am certain of that. He loved children. He'd play with my son Eric and my son Donald, and he'd just play with them forever. He loved children, but he was not a child molester. And, you know, that whole final saga of Neverland and the police and what they did was, I think, a very, very bad part of Michael's life.
Are you coming out for the service?
They invited me today, and they've called me so many times that I'd love to do it, Larry. I just won't be able to be there. I'd love to be there. I'd love to be with you. I'd love to be with the family, but I just won't be able to be there.
What do you make of this whole thing? There's millions of people going to watch this on television.
Well, he was a unique guy. You know, I first met him years ago when he did a concert at Madison Square Garden, and I was backstage, and I just spoke to him for a little while. And, you know, he was sort of low-key, and even in those days, and that was the Thriller days, when he had that great success. And it was amazing, because I talked to him, and I'd say, there's no way that this guy is going out to that stage to perform. And then you'd see him moonwalk across the stage, and the place would go crazy. And, you know, I've had every entertainer working for me, more or less, and I just sort of know them all. I knew Pavarotti. I knew all of the great entertainers. And I think the greatest entertainer that I've ever seen was Michael Jackson. There's never been anyone like him. And I guess Elvis was like him, and the Beatles, and, you know, there were a few every generation. But Sinatra was great. But, you know, there are very few. I mean, these people, you can count them on your hand, and Michael was one of them. And just a great guy. He took he's just had tremendous, really difficult last 10 years. His last 10 years, he's been living in hell.
Donald, thanks so much for sharing these moments with us.
Thank you very much, Larry.
Donald Trump, Nico Brando, Mark Harris.
Long before he was part of the current political story here in Indiana, Donald Trump had a connection to another big Indiana story. Our Emily Longnecker spoke with a retired Indiana pastor who says there's another side to Donald Trump that we haven't seen during the campaign.
Please welcome the next president of the United States, Mr. Donald J. Trump.
Love him or hate him? This is the Donald Trump voters have come to know and expect in the past year.
You know, all the tough guys endorse me. I like that, okay?
But before he was Donald Trump, Republican presidential candidate vying for Hoosier votes in next week's Indiana primary, retired pastor Ray Probasco says Trump was an unexpected visitor one April afternoon in Cicero, Indiana. That's where Ryan White, the Kokomo teen who became the face of those battling the stigma of AIDS, lived. During his fight against AIDS, White became friends with several celebrities, most notably Sir Elton John and Michael Jackson. Probasco was White's pastor at the time and was there when the teen died in 1990.
Ryan died on Palm Sunday of that year.
The next day, Probasco was at White's home when Jackson arrived with Donald Trump.
As soon as Ryan had passed away and the news was communicated, Michael and Donald Trump were meeting together in Atlantic City. And as soon as they heard, Mr. Trump put Michael on his plane and flew him to Indianapolis, and then they took a car from the airport to Cicero to Ryan's home. It was just very nice to know that here was someone of his stature that was willing to take his time, to be compassionate and understanding, and